My name is Ben Crawford, and I'm about to tell you how my wife's family tried to steal $28.5 million from me, and how their own prenup became the weapon that destroyed them. 11 months ago, I was sleeping in a Hampton Inn, wondering how 10 years of marriage could disappear the moment real money showed up. Today, I own Crawford Electric Solutions, the fastest-growing electrical contractor in the Dallas-Fort Worth Metroplex, with 35 skilled electricians and annual revenue hitting $8.2 million. I'm 52 years old, and until 11 months ago, I thought I had life figured out. I'd spent 25 years building my electrical contracting business from a one-man operation working out of a rented garage in Garland to a company pulling in $135,000 a year. Nothing fancy by Dallas standards, but enough to keep my wife Miranda and me comfortable in our 4-bedroom house on a quiet street in Plano, just off Legacy Drive. My specialty was commercial electrical work, office buildings, retail centers, warehouse complexes throughout the DFW area. When you're wiring a 200,000 square foot Amazon distribution center in Grand Prairie, every connection matters. One mistake in the main electrical panel, and the whole operation shuts down. I'd learned that lesson the hard way on a job in Richardson back in 2019 when a subcontractor used 12-gauge wire instead of 10-gauge on a 30-amp circuit. Cost us 2 weeks and $85,000 to rewire the entire HVAC system before the city inspector would sign off. That attention to detail, documenting everything, following the National Electrical Code to the letter, never cutting corners even when general contractors pressured me to speed things up, would serve me well in the legal battle ahead. In construction, you learn that the guy with the best paperwork usually wins the argument. Miranda and I had been married for 10 years come this past June. She was beautiful, sophisticated, and came from the kind of old Texas money that built downtown Dallas back when oil derricks dotted the landscape. Her family, the Whitmores, owned a significant chunk of commercial real estate between Deep Ellum and the Arts District, plus shopping centers scattered throughout Plano, Frisco, and Allen. They never thought a working guy like me was good enough for their precious daughter. They made that crystal clear when they insisted I sign a prenuptial agreement before our wedding in June 2014. The whole thing happened at the law offices of Hughes & Associates on McKinney Avenue, one of those glass towers where the marble in the lobby probably cost more than my annual insurance premiums. It's just to protect the family assets, Augustus Whitmore, call him Gus, had explained, adjusting his $15,000 Patek Philippe watch. Nothing personal, Ben, just business, standard procedure for families with substantial holdings. I signed it without much thought. Love makes you do stupid things, and I was head over heels for Miranda. The prenup seemed straightforward enough. What was theirs stayed theirs. What was mine stayed mine. Anything we acquired together during marriage would be considered community property under Texas law. Simple enough, right? Looking back, I should have hired my own lawyer to review those 12 pages of legal language. But I was 42, eager to marry the woman I loved, and frankly intimidated by the whole Whitmore operation. Their family lawyer, some Harvard-educated shark named Patterson, made it clear that signing was non-negotiable if I wanted to marry into the family. The Whitmore family compound in Highland Park was like something you'd see on the TV show Dallas. The main house was 9,000 square feet of imported brick and local arrogance, sitting on 3 acres with a circular driveway, swimming pool, and tennis court. Every time we visited for their mandatory Sunday dinners, I felt like I was applying for a job I'd never qualify for. Gus's garage housed his prized collection, the 1967 Shelby Cobra 427, $485,000, a 1963 Ferrari 250 GT, and a 1970 Plymouth Cuda. Combined value exceeded $1.2 million, more than my business generated in 3 years. He'd bought the Cobra at Barrett-Jackson and never let anyone forget it. Cordelia, Miranda's mother, spent her time organizing charity galas for causes she couldn't pronounce but could certainly use for tax write-offs. The Whitmore Foundation, established for the betterment of disadvantaged youth in urban Dallas, seemed to spend more money on fundraising dinners at the Crescent Hotel than on actual youth programs. Victoria, Miranda's older sister, had never worked a day in her life, but somehow held the title of Vice President of Marketing at Whitmore Properties. She lived in a $2.3 million penthouse in uptown Dallas and drove a different luxury car every 6 months, all paid for by the family trust. For 10 years, they tolerated me. Barely. During family gatherings, their conversations would shift when I entered the room. Oil and gas investments, real estate acquisitions, political fundraisers. The kind of talk that made it clear I was the hired help who'd somehow ended up at the dinner table. I was the electrical contractor their daughter had married during what they probably saw as her practical phase. They figured I'd eventually get tired of their world of charity auctions and country club politics, or she'd get tired of mine with its early morning job sites and weekend emergency calls. Miranda worked part-time as an interior designer for a boutique firm in Bishop Arts District, earning about $42,000 a year. More for personal fulfillment than financial necessity. Her trust fund made sure she never had to worry about mortgage payments or grocery bills. We talked about having kids someday, maybe expanding my business into residential work. Normal married couple conversations. She had one habit that used to drive me crazy. Every Tuesday and Friday, she'd stop at the Tom Thumb on Preston Road and buy $75 worth of lottery tickets, always the same. Numbers, family birthdays, anniversaries, the date we first met at a charity fundraiser in Deep Ellum. Someday she'd always joke while organizing the tickets in her wallet, "These numbers are going to make us rich." That money came out of our joint checking account at Chase Bank. $75 twice a week for 10 years. I calculated it once during a slow afternoon at the office, $78,000 in lottery tickets. Enough to buy 2 new service trucks or completely upgrade my diagnostic equipment inventory. "Babe, that's enough for new test equipment and a bucket truck," I'd tease her. "We could expand into industrial troubleshooting with that kind of money." "Just wait," she'd respond, filing the tickets in her organized little box. "When we hit it big, you'll thank me for being patient." I should have paid more attention to that word. We. August 17th, 2024. A Saturday afternoon that changed everything. I remember the date because I was reviewing electrical drawings for a new medical complex in Frisco, 180,000 square feet, $2.3 million electrical contract, when Miranda called at 6:22 p.m. Her voice was so loud and high-pitched I had to hold the phone away from my ear. "Ben, oh my God, Ben, we won. We actually won the big one." My first thought was that she'd won some interior design contest, maybe a $500 gift certificate to a furniture showroom. Won what, babe? The Powerball, the jackpot, $28.5 million. I dropped my pencil and stared at the electrical schematic spread across my desk. The numbers and circuit diagrams suddenly seemed meaningless compared to what she'd just said. I drove home from my office in Richardson so fast I'm lucky a DPD patrol car didn't pull me over. Found Miranda in our kitchen, dancing around in circles with a lottery ticket clutched in her hand, tears of joy streaming down her face. Our golden retriever Max was barking and jumping around, feeding off her excitement. $28.5 million. After federal taxes, Texas doesn't tax lottery winnings, thank God, it would come to about $18.7 million. I stared at that little piece of paper, purchased at 5:47 p.m. according to the timestamp, paid for with our Chase Bank debit card ending in 4821, the same account we'd used for every lottery ticket purchase for the past 10 years. For about 45 minutes sitting at our kitchen table with Max's head on my lap, I genuinely thought our dreams had come true. Maybe we could pay off the house, expand the business, take that trip to Europe Miranda had always wanted, set up college funds for the kids we'd been talking about having. Miranda was already on her phone with her parents, practically shrieking with excitement. "Mom, Dad, we did it! We actually did it! We're millionaires, Ben," she kept repeating, throwing her arms around me between phone calls. "We're actually rich!" That same evening, around 8:30, the entire Whitmore family descended on our house like a pack of well-dressed vultures. Gus arrived first in his black Mercedes S-Class, followed by Cordelia in her white Bentley Bentayga. Victoria pulled up in her red Porsche 911, and even Miranda's snobbish Aunt Margaret made an appearance in her champagne-colored Cadillac Escalade. They brought Dom Perignon, expensive flowers, and the kind of fake enthusiasm that screamed trouble. But something felt wrong from the moment they walked through our front door. The way they looked at me had changed completely. It was subtle at first, sideways glances when they thought I wasn't looking, conversations that stopped abruptly when I entered the room. Miranda seemed different too, like she was seeing me for the first time and questioning every choice she'd made. "We need to be smart about this windfall," Gus kept saying, swirling his champagne and pacing around our living room like he owned the place. This kind of money requires proper management, professional financial advisors, legal protection. Family money needs family oversight, Cordelia added, shooting me a look that could freeze antifreeze. There are tax implications, investment strategies, estate planning considerations that someone from Ben's background wouldn't understand. Over the next 4 days, the change in Miranda was dramatic and heartbreaking. She started having long, hushed phone conversations with her family, leaving the room whenever I approached. When I tried to discuss our plans for the money, maybe paying off the house, upgrading my service trucks, expanding into the industrial sector I'd been eyeing for years, she became increasingly evasive and cold. "We need to think this through carefully, Ben," she'd say, not meeting my eyes. "My father knows people, investment advisors, tax specialists. We can't just start spending this money like we won some church raffle." Our money had become we real fast, and that we definitely didn't include me. I started noticing other changes. Miranda spent hours on her laptop researching luxury condos in downtown Dallas. She'd bookmarked websites for BMW dealerships, designer boutiques, high-end travel agencies. When I asked about it, she'd quickly close the browser and change the subject. "Just looking at options for when we get the money sorted out," she'd say, but her tone suggested I wasn't part of those options. August 21st, 2024. 4 days after winning that would change both our lives forever. Miranda asked me to come home early from a job site in Allen where we were installing the electrical systems for a new urgent care clinic. Said we needed to have a serious conversation about our future together. I walked into our living room and found the entire Whitmore family waiting like a corporate board meeting called to fire the CEO. Gus sat in my recliner wearing a $4,000 Tom Ford suit. Cordelia clutched her $8,000 Hermes bag like it contained the secrets of the universe. Victoria smirked by the window overlooking our backyard, checking her Apple Watch every few minutes like she had somewhere more important to be. Miranda looked nervous, fidgeting with her wedding ring and avoiding eye contact. That should have been my first major red flag. "Ben," Miranda began, her voice unnaturally formal and distant. "We need to discuss our situation. The lottery money has created some complications that we didn't anticipate." Gus cleared his throat like he was about to deliver a quarterly earnings report. "Son, this lottery win changes the entire dynamic of your marriage. Miranda's windfall needs proper protection from potential creditors, tax liabilities, and other financial risks that could jeopardize the family's long-term security." "Our windfall," I corrected, feeling heat rising in my chest like a short-circuit building to failure. "We're married. Community property under Texas law, right?" The room went dead silent. You could have heard a circuit breaker trip in the garage. "Actually, Ben," Gus continued, pulling out a leather portfolio like he'd come prepared for this exact conversation, "that's not exactly how lottery winnings work in Texas. You see, gambling proceeds can be considered separate property in certain circumstances, especially when the winning spouse can demonstrate individual ownership of the ticket and personal selection of the numbers." "When what?" I asked, my electrical training kicking in. "When something doesn't make sense, you trace the circuit back to the source." Miranda finally spoke up, her voice barely above a whisper but getting stronger as she continued. "Ben, I've been thinking about this for months, even before we won. We're from different worlds. This money it opened my eyes to what I really want." She glanced at her mother, who nodded approvingly. "I picked those numbers. They're based on my family's important dates, and I physically purchased the winning ticket. My father's attorney says that establishes individual ownership under Texas lottery statutes. I felt like I'd grabbed a live 480-volt line without my safety gear. My hands were actually shaking. This woman I'd loved, supported through her career struggles, planned a future with, she was looking at me like I was a stranger who'd overstayed his welcome. "I want you to move out tonight," she continued, her voice shaking but determined. "I've already talked to a lawyer about filing for separation. We both know this marriage hasn't been working for a while." That last part was a complete lie. We'd been happy, or at least I thought we had been. We'd talked about expanding the business, maybe buying a lake house, starting a family. Apparently, those had been my dreams, not ours. Gus leaned forward like a vulture spotting roadkill on a highway. "The prenuptial agreement you signed protects both parties in exactly this type of situation, Ben. Miranda's lottery winnings are clearly her separate property under the terms you agreed to. You're not legally entitled to any portion of those funds. I sat there stunned, feeling like someone had ripped the foundation out from under a building I'd spent 10 years constructing. They were throwing me away like damaged wire the moment real money entered the picture. 10 years of marriage, and I was suddenly disposable. I see, I said quietly, my voice steadier than I felt. So this was all planned out in advance. The family meeting, the legal consultation, the separation demand. Nothing was planned, Miranda snapped, finally showing some real emotion, but the wrong kind. But now that we have this opportunity, I'm not going to let anyone take advantage of me or compromise my family's financial security. Take advantage. That's what she called our decade of marriage. Building a life together, supporting each other through business ups and downs, planning for a future that apparently never included me as an equal partner. Victoria actually laughed from her position by the window, a sound like breaking glass. Come on, Ben. You had to know this day would come eventually. Did you really think you'd be part of this family forever? You fix electrical problems. We own buildings. Fine, I said, standing up and looking each of them in the eye. I'll pack my things and be out within the hour. But understand something. I helped buy every one of those lottery tickets for 10 years. That's community property, and I'll prove it. Miranda looked relieved, like I'd just solved a problem she'd been struggling with. Her family seemed pleased with how easily I was capitulating to their demands. They had no idea what they'd just set in motion. I moved into a Hampton Inn and Suites near DFW Airport that same night, paying $139 per night with my business credit card. Room 312 became my new headquarters, a sterile box with beige walls, industrial carpet, and the constant hum of the HVAC system that reminded me of job sites. But instead of wallowing in self-pity or drowning my sorrows at the hotel bar, I did something they probably never expected from a working-class electrical contractor. I got to work with the same methodical approach I used to troubleshoot the most complex electrical problems, starting with the basics and working through every connection until I found the fault. 25 years running an electrical contracting business had taught me one fundamental truth. Documentation beats emotion every time. When a general contractor claims the job specifications changed mid-project, you pull out the signed change orders with timestamps and signatures. When a supplier insists they delivered the correct materials, you show them the original purchase orders with part numbers, quantities, and delivery receipts. Evidence wins arguments, period. I spent the next 4 sleepless nights in that Hampton Inn room with my laptop open, researching Texas family code until my eyes burned from staring at the screen. I started with the basics, Texas Family Code Section 3.003, which establishes the presumption that property acquired during marriage is community property. Then I dug deeper into precedent cases, court decisions, and appellate rulings. I read everything I could find about lottery winnings, separate versus community property classifications, and commingling of marital assets. I took notes like I was studying for the master electrician's exam all over again, filling up a yellow legal pad with case citations, statutory references, and key legal principles. Then I built a spreadsheet that would make any forensic accountant proud. Every single lottery ticket purchase Miranda had made since our wedding in June 2014, all from our joint checking account at Chase Bank. I downloaded 10 years of bank statements, going through them line by line, documenting every transaction with obsessive detail. August 17th, 2024, $75 lottery purchase, debit card ending 4821, 5:47 p.m. at Tom Thumb, Preston Road. August 13th, 2024, $75 lottery purchase, same card, 3:22 p.m., same location. August 10th, 2024, $75 lottery purchase, same card, 6:15 p.m., same location. Going back month after month, year after year. $75 twice a week, sometimes 3 times during big jackpot weeks. 10 years of purchases totaling exactly $78,000. All community funds. All meticulously documented with bank records, timestamps, merchant information, and even the specific lottery number combinations Miranda had used consistently. If the Whitmores wanted to fight dirty with expensive lawyers and intimidation tactics, I'd show them what a methodical electrical contractor does when he's properly motivated and has the documentation to back it up. But I needed professional help, and that meant finding a lawyer who could go toe-to-toe with whatever high-priced legal talent the Whitmore family would unleash. This wasn't going to be a job for some strip mall attorney who handled traffic tickets and simple divorces. I spent 2 days researching divorce attorneys throughout the Dallas Metroplex, read every review on Avo, studied articles in the Dallas Business Journal, and checked win-loss records in high-asset divorce cases. I called guys from job sites who'd been through messy divorces, asking for recommendations and real-world experiences. "You need Luther Garrison," said Mike Rodriguez, a master electrician who'd worked with me on several large commercial projects over the years. Guy went through a brutal divorce with his ex-wife's family in 2021. They had serious money, tried to bury him in legal fees and endless motions. Luther destroyed them in court, got Mike everything he was entitled to, and then some. Luther Garrison, former SMU Law School professor, 22 years specializing in high-asset divorces and complex property division cases. His consultation fee was $750 for the first hour, but his track record of taking on wealthy families and winning spoke volumes about his capabilities. His office occupied half the 23rd floor of a glass tower on Commerce Street in downtown Dallas, with views of the Trinity River and the courthouse where we'd eventually face off against the Whitmores. Luther himself was about 59, distinguished gray hair, wearing a navy suit that probably cost more than my monthly truck payments. But he had the focused intensity of someone who'd spent decades in courtroom warfare and genuinely enjoyed the challenge. "Mr. Crawford," he said, gesturing to a leather chair across from his mahogany desk, "tell me about this prenuptial agreement the Whitmore family is using as their shield." I handed him the copy I'd retrieved from our home office filing cabinet before moving out. 12 pages of dense legal language that I'd barely skimmed through before signing 10 years ago. Luther read through every page carefully, his expression growing more interested and occasionally amused as he progressed through the document. "This is absolutely fascinating," he said finally, setting the document down and looking directly at me with something approaching admiration. "Your in-law's attorney was extremely thorough when drafting this agreement, perhaps too thorough for their own good. What do you mean?" Luther flipped to page 6 and pointed to a specific section highlighted in yellow. Right here in section 4.2. It states very clearly that any prizes, winnings, gambling proceeds, or awards of any kind acquired during the course of marriage shall be considered community property, subject to equal distribution upon dissolution of marriage. I felt something cold and electric run through my chest like touching a live wire, but they told me lottery winnings are separate property under Texas law. Under normal circumstances, lottery tickets purchased with community funds during marriage are indeed community property, Luther explained, leaning back in his chair. But even if Miranda had somehow used her separate money, which she clearly didn't based on your bank records, this prenuptial agreement specifically overrides any separate property protections. They essentially wrote a guarantee that you'd get half of any lottery winnings. He pulled out a legal pad and started making notes. "Did you actually read this document before signing it 10 years ago? Honestly, I skimmed through it. I was 42, in love, and they made it clear that signing was required if I wanted to marry Miranda. Their family lawyer, some Harvard-educated shark named Patterson, made the whole process feel non-negotiable. Sign it or the wedding was off." Luther smiled for the first time since I'd walked into his office. "Mr. Crawford, your in-laws just handed you the legal blueprint for their own destruction. They were so concerned about protecting their family wealth from you that they accidentally created an ironclad guarantee that you'd get half of any lottery winnings acquired during the marriage. So I'm legally entitled to half of the $18.7 million. According to this prenuptial agreement they forced you to sign, combined with Texas Family Code Section 3.03 and your documented community fund purchases, you have an extremely strong case. But we need to be strategic about this. The Whitmore family has substantial resources and they're going to fight this with everything they've got." He pulled out a retainer agreement and set it on the desk between us. "My fee for a case this complex is $35,000 up front, with additional costs depending on how far they push this in court and how many expert witnesses we need. Discovery, depositions, court filings, it all adds up quickly. Are you prepared for that level of financial commitment?" I'd already started liquidating business assets and maxing out every credit line I had access to. Best investment I'll ever make. Good, because based on what I'm seeing here, we're not just going to win this case, we're going to make legal history. The Whitmores created the perfect storm for their own defeat. The next morning, Miranda filed for divorce with a motion claiming the lottery winnings as her separate property. By that afternoon, the Whitmores had hired Bradley Pemberton from Dallas's most expensive white shoe law firm, bringing 18 years of experience crushing working-class defendants who dared to challenge wealthy clients. Bradley Pemberton was everything you'd expect from Dallas's most expensive divorce attorney. Armani suits, corner office on the 45th floor of Reunion Tower with panoramic city views, and a reputation for crushing working-class defendants who dared challenge his wealthy clients. His hourly rate of $1,200 could fund my entire payroll for a week. His strategy was predictable and brutal: bury me in legal paperwork and bleed me dry with fees before we ever saw the inside of a courtroom. Motion to dismiss for lack of standing. Motion to compel arbitration. Motion for summary judgment. Motion for sanctions claiming my case was frivolous harassment. Each filing required Luther to respond, and each response drained my business credit lines faster than a short circuit. Meanwhile, Miranda was living like a lottery winner and documenting every moment on social media for the world to see. Instagram posts showed her new BMW X7, $89,000, purchased September 5th. Designer shopping sprees at North Park Center with bags from Louis Vuitton and Hermes, and a long weekend in Aspen with first-class flights and $600 per night hotel suites. She put down $1.2 million on a luxury condo at Museum Tower downtown, 20,800 square feet with Trinity River views and floor-to-ceiling windows. Her Facebook post read, "New chapter, new home. Sometimes life gives you exactly what you need when you need it most." Hashtag blessed, hashtag lottery, hashtag new beginnings, hashtag living my best life. Perfect evidence of community property commingling that Luther filed away for the trial. The legal battle intensified through fall 2024. Luther methodically built our case, while Pemberton fought every subpoena and discovery request like his reputation depended on it. We documented Miranda's spending spree with forensic precision, proving she'd mixed lottery funds with community assets instead of keeping them separate as required for separate property claims. Then came our breakthrough on October 22nd. Ben, Luther called me at 7:30 p.m., barely containing his excitement. Pemberton made a critical error that just won us this case. In his rush to file preliminary motions back in September, he actually acknowledged in court documents that the lottery ticket was purchased during the marriage with community funds from the parties' joint account. He signed this under penalty of perjury. I nearly dropped my phone. What does that mean exactly? It means their own attorney just destroyed their entire case. Pemberton's so used to intimidating working-class defendants into quick settlements that he got sloppy with his paperwork. This admission is legally binding. By November, panic was setting in at Whitmore headquarters. The settlement offers started arriving like clockwork. November 12th, Gus called personally. Ben, let's be reasonable here. $1.5 million, tax-free. More than most people see in a lifetime of honest work. I appreciate the offer, Gus, but I'll have to decline. November 28th, Pemberton's formal offer arrived by courier. $3.2 million. Final offer. Take it or face years of appeals that will cost you everything you have left. See you in court, I told his paralegal. December 10th, desperate attempt. Mr. Crawford, Pemberton said during a conference call, my client is prepared to offer $5.8 million plus your legal fees paid. This is financial madness. You're risking everything for a theoretical victory. The prenup is clear, I replied. Half means half. $935 million or nothing. Each time they hung up a little more desperate than before. January 18th, 2025. Dallas County Family Court, Judge Patricia Hernandez presiding. The courthouse was packed with local media covering what had become known as electrician versus oil money. News crews from WFAA, CBS 11, and the Dallas Morning News lined the hallway. I wore the same Navy suit from our wedding 10 years earlier, the one I'd bought at Joss, a bank for $300. Luther had suggested something more expensive, but I wanted to be myself, not play dress-up for people who'd never respect me anyway. The trial was brief but decisive. Luther presented our bank records showing 10 years of lottery purchases from our joint account, totaling exactly $78,000. He displayed Miranda's social media posts documenting her luxury spending spree. Most importantly, he read Pemberton's own court filing acknowledging community fund usage. "Mr. Pemberton," Luther said during the most dramatic moment of the trial, "I'm holding your preliminary motion dated September 18, 2024. On page 9, paragraph 4, you stated, and I quote, 'The lottery ticket in question was purchased during the marriage with community funds from the parties' joint account.' Do you remember writing that?" Pemberton's face went pale as courtroom paper. The silence stretched for what felt like an eternity. "Your Honor, that was an inadvertent misstatement in the preliminary filing. Mr. Pemberton," Judge Hernandez interjected, her voice sharp as a circuit breaker. "You've practiced law for 18 years. Are you telling this court you don't understand the difference between community and separate property when drafting legal documents?" The silence stretched for 15 seconds. Pemberton's $2,200 per hour reputation was crumbling in real time before a packed courtroom. "No, Your Honor." The statement was accurate as written. Judge Hernandez ruled from the bench at 2:18 p.m. The prenuptial agreement is unambiguous. Section 4.2 explicitly designates lottery winnings as community property. The defendant's actions in commingling funds demonstrate her own recognition of this fact. Mr. Crawford is awarded 50% of net lottery winnings, $9.35 million. The gavel came down with the most satisfying sound I'd ever heard. 6 months later, I used my settlement to acquire 2 established electrical companies in Fort Worth and Arlington. Crawford Electric Solutions now employs 35 skilled electricians across 3 locations with major contracts including the new Amazon distribution center in Grand Prairie, $2.1 million, Presbyterian Hospital expansion, $1.8 million, and the Toyota headquarters renovation, $1.5 million. Our first-year revenue hit $8.2 million. Miranda had to sell her BMW, forfeit her condo deposit, and liquidate designer purchases to pay me. Last I heard, she's working at her father's real estate office for $45,000 annually, living in a modest 2-bedroom apartment in Addison, and her Instagram account went private after the trial. The Whitmores never spoke to me again, which was perfectly fine. Gus sold his prized Shelby Cobra to help cover the $430,000 in legal fees Pemberton charged them. Poetic justice at its finest. Luther's final bill came to $71,000, the $35,000 retainer plus $36,000 in additional costs for depositions, expert witnesses, and court filings. The best investment I ever made. Sometimes the best revenge isn't revenge at all. It's letting people face the consequences of their own greed and arrogance. They created the legal weapon that destroyed them. I just had the persistence and documentation to use it properly. My 2019 F-250 still runs perfectly, by the way. Some things are worth keeping, and some lessons are worth learning the hard way. The Whitmores learned that contracts mean exactly what they say, especially when you're the one who insisted on writing them in the first place.